My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even a score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
What up, Night Nation? It's your boy Roger, and it's an episode of The Nighted Ones, number 133 to be exact. As a reminder, we are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous, yes, that's an infamous rapper, our resident influencer and IG star, shooting the breeze, talking UCF sports. Remember to like and follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle, Big 12 Huddle, and a new stream coming soon. All right, folks, it's the doldrums of summer. You haven't seen us in a week and a half or so, and there's a reason. And I want to share that I am actually not in my normal studio location. As you can tell, no green screen, no traditional microphone, etc., because I am officially back in Orlando, which is super exciting. Just in time for the football season and just in time to spend that time with you. So I moved over the past week, which is why we missed last week. So I apologize for that. However, we will have a little fun this week as we march towards the season. So this week, we're going to have our good friends, Alan Levin, coming back to the stage, and the one, the only, the man who caught the interception, Trey Neal.
What's up, gentlemen? How you
Hey,
doing?
Gentlemen. It's just one of me, so gentleman.
Can't see it, but I'm on baby watch too. So.
Oh, see, that's dedication right there. That's dedication. We've had a spate of babies for the show lately. Alan is actually on baby duty as well, a little bit younger, so he'll be joining us a little bit later for a little bit of time. And less than he had originally planned. But we've got you, so I'm excited about that. And, you know, one day we'll be transitioning from watching UCF football to watching your son play UCF football too. So that being said, we've got UCF football to talk about this week, which is awesome. So there's lots of things going on. Number one, we're going to talk a little bit about Scary Derry. If you don't know what that's about, it's about our number one rated receiver in the Big 12 that's on our team by PFF. So we'll be talking about Josh Derry a little bit and how he's going to change the game for us this year by creating something that we haven't seen in a while, separation. So excited about that. Well, UCF also has another round of TDT funding as we complete our tower upgrade. If you haven't seen it, those of you that have bought sky boxes have been on the floor. They're finishing the finishing touches. I drove by not last week or the week before, and they had all the lights on. It looked great. They had the other lights on the other side of the stadium on as well. So that was super exciting. But there's another round of athletics investments that we're up for. We'll give you bring you up to date on that. In addition to that, there's been another injunction. This time, it's not for someone who played for another team after doing something illegal. This time, it's for all those players in 2022. We'll tell you what that means. The Florida BOG is meeting, or Board of Governors is meeting at UCF. And why is that important? Well, because there's a lot of things on the radar on how to make the state of Florida and its football teams competitive in the new era of college football. And that era may be changing, as we were talking about the Protect College Sports Act and what all that means for UCF. We didn't get to talk about Stillwell. I told you guys 2 episodes ago that to keep an eye on the Texas Tech Raiders. And in spite of Stillwell's promise and And in invocation of UCF, in his lawsuit, he is going to the Raiders. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit about a new basketball game that was signed this week that will be played November 2nd against another in-state team. So let's start with Scary Derry. One of the things that we noticed, and I'd love to get your take on this as a defensive back, Trey, there wasn't a whole lot of separation by our receivers last year. We went to our tight end, who was our most productive receiver for the most part. Tell me a little bit about what that does and why it's important to create and stretch the field.
I mean, I've always been like, while yes, speed kills. I know that's like a big thing we've always preached, like UC fast, like just at least through our recent history, like we want to be explosive fast. But separation is, if you're a one-trick pony, I'll say, like you're just a fast receiver, you can kind of understand what kind of routes you're as a DB, like as a former DB, like, all right, this guy's running either a quick slant or a go ball or a deep route. Like, so I'm playing the quick slant, then I'm just playing anything deep. When you can separate and run routes really well, realistically, you're unguardable if you give the quarterback time. I mean, there's no way to perfectly guard you because you're always going to have at least a step, and that's all you really need. I mean, at this level, you're talking power 4. One step's all you need. One step is the difference between being open and an interception. That's why, we talk about it so much with the quarter, like how important quarterback play is and timing and understanding the timing of your receiver. I know, like, Roger, like me and you have been big of, like, we hate when our quarterbacks are hurt because they can't get the rep, especially new quarterbacks. You can't get the reps in with your receivers and know how they run, know how, they like to break it this way. And when they do it, but when they do break a certain way,
I mean, a little bit about that right now with a bunch of diapers you've changed. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know a lot about it. But when they do break those routes, you want to know how they look, how they come out of it. Some people come out of their routes a little bit slower. Some people are super explosive out of them. So when you're able to separate with ease, like, Scary Derry has his reputation. That's a quarterback's best friend. When you're open, even when people might think you're not open. A corner can feel like they're on top of you, and then at the last second, you just give them a little shoulder and you're breaking out of your route. That's the step you need. And if the quarterback's on time, I mean, Alonzo Barnett he's a well-seasoned guy. He's played big-time football, big-time games. He understands that step is everything, especially when the pocket's collapsing and is getting pressure. That step's everything. So I think those are the hardest receivers to guard because those are the things that I think great separation is the equalizer for any great coverage, great defensive call. If you can get, have a double team on you. If you can create separation off of both of those guys, it doesn't matter if you're double. I think that's why those route runners, that's why route running is so important. We get all these kids that are fast. We want speed because that's an important aspect. But at the end of the day, if you can't run precise routes and out of your break at a certain time for the quarterback, it doesn't really matter. You're just fast.
Yeah, the biggest thing for me with everything you just said is something that we talk about all the time as former defensive players, is that when you're playing defense, you cannot cover every part of the field.
Correct.
So what you're looking for is leverage, and leverage doesn't just mean, hey, where's my hand placement when I'm on the offense or on the defensive line, right? It also means, can we leverage one side of the field because one receiver is stronger and we're comfortable with that one receiver being covered by one?
Yep.
Well, if you're specifically in the defensive back world, right, you have that leverage. You're also looking for boundary or corner, or are you going to push them? How do you use the boundary to your advantage as a defender to cut off angles and do all that other fun stuff? But the reality of it is if you've got someone who can create separation, you may have to play a double high safety.
Yep.
Or, you may have to shade that safety to one side of the field, which means that you can then create mismatches on the other side of the field.
Yep.
Or if you have a halfway decent receiver, he's only got one man to beat. So it's much harder for defenses to be able to, if you've got someone who can create separation, it's much harder for defenses to cover the entire field because they can't, or they have to take a man out of the box. Yep. And when you take a man out of the box, that allows you to run. Exactly. Right. So
and that's where a lot of teams, I wouldn't say they're reluctant to, but they don't want to have to use a safety nowadays because you want extra eyes in the backfield, like in the run game. So what they like to do now is just play the corner off, and they might try to sneak a backer out. Like that's where, it's cat and mouse. And like you said, it's when you have those guys who can win, it's not just like they can do it creating separation. They open up everybody else. And at this level, I mean, we're talking power 4. You're number 2 guy. Every receiver on our roster, if they're playing on Saturdays, they should be able to beat every single corner one-on-one. That's just the expectation. Now, how likely is that every single time you do it? You're not going to do it every single time, but majority of the times if you get one-on-one, even if you don't get the ball, you should be able to rewind that rep and say, hey, I beat him one-on-one. Like that's just because as a defender, Roger, we're playing a reactionary, like we're reacting to them. If they're not good, we can beat them to the spots they're trying to get to. If those are high-level guys, we should be a half step behind. And, I mean, I've even seen – you're talking a Mike Hughes level first-round guy. One-on-one, what made him special was it was really hard to beat him. The guys that beat him, I mean, to be honest, the only guys that really beat him were other guys that are playing in the NFL right now. Like, that's the kind of – that's the kind of ability that you should be able to have when you have a guy that can open it up for one side. You're leaving a one-on-one, and that's what I think I always say that's what made us special back then was we could just put Mike by himself. And then I think for even a couple of the years of that little run, like we could put Shaquille Griffin out there by himself. We could put Mike out there by himself. Eventually turned to Bam Moore and then Neville Clark and then Aaron Rodgers. Like Richie Grant could do it a little bit. Like that's just that little pocket. That's what we did a lot. And that helps neutralize the guy that we're talking about, a receiver who can dictate coverage. And if you leave him one-on-one, he's going to beat you. So you have to give him help. We could kind of isolate, okay, we'll give him help because we have a beast on the other side that can take away your number 2 guy. So I think that's where, you start talking about depth of your roster and year 1 roster portal build versus year 2 in the system, year 2 of guys learning. That's where those steps should be taken so that you can win those one-on-ones on the backside.
Yeah, 100%. And the biggest thing, for me when I think about all of this is, you mentioned shading a linebacker back and doing all that other stuff. Again, it opens up the screen game. It opens up the ability, if you've got all of your guys, your defenders, or you're playing extra defenders in the back, or like a lot of people play nickels now, right? And those nickels are there for a reason, right? They're to help with the run game, but also the short game. Yep. If you can't play a nickel if you're having to play deep. So you're putting
your nickel in a huge bind.
100%. And by extension, your linebacker.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So, so again, it's all about creating dilemmas and mismatches, right? And if one person can create a mismatch on their own, right, by sucking up 2 defenders, right, then, when you talk about, you talked about how we're always a step behind on defense. Yes, you've got your pre-snap reads, so you're trying to understand what the formation is trying to do. Yep. Are they heavy on one side? Are they, what's their alignment look like? Are they between gaps? Are they, how are they lined up? And then you've got single TD or tight ends or double tight ends. What's the tight end doing? All of that stuff. So we've got a really good tight end, right? Yep. That's a pass catching tight end. We've got a receiver that can create separation. So even if we had a mediocre other receiver that was out on the other side of the field, that still creates that dilemma for defenses that we're talking about. They have to account for where everybody is, and they can't sit back. And if you in college football, in Power 4 college football, if you're a half step behind, you're burnt. And if you're burnt, that's going to lead to points or big time yards. Yep. So, that's the whole point with this. And the reason we're talking about all this is so that you guys understand the type of dilemma someone who can stretch the field creates. Also, the thing about Josh Derry is he's listed at 5'9" and 182 pounds. So he's not a big receiver, yet according to PFF, he's the number 1 rated returning receiver in the entire Big 12, and he has not played a snap of college football in the FBS. He's played FCS before, right? So he comes from Monmouth, but he was also one of the highest rated receivers coming up in the transfer portal. So if you think about that, he's graded an 89.9 PFF as a transfer from FCS, despite not playing a down of Power 4 college football. So when you start thinking about that, there's got to be something there, right? And we've had a history of speed, especially with your teams. And then when you had like the Javon Baker had one side of the field and then Kobe was on the other side of the field, right? What did that do? It created dilemmas. If you went to Kobe, he had a good 2 or 3 games. They started shading towards him. Then they went to Javon, right? So again, it creates those opportunities for those other receivers, and it creates opportunities in your formations because you're taking people out of the box, whether you go to the middle range of the field, whether you go with a tight end towards the 15 to 20 yards out, or if you're having them go on a go route or something like that, or even if you're doing a mesh play on the goal line, right? If you're doing a mesh play on the goal line and you got to split somebody out because you've got a fast receiver that you got to cover, and not goal line, but let's say 20 yards out, that creates distance now that allows you to play in the red zone, right? So there's a lot there. Now for him, just to give a little bit of history on him, he's absolutely a deep ball threat. So if we're going to him, we're going to be throwing the ball deep. In high school, he was a track and field star. He won gold medals in the 400-meter dash and the 4x100 or 4x400 relay, which means he's got speed, but it's not just burst. He's also got speed and breakaway speed, right? So he's going to be able to do that long enough for a football field. Even in, like, I know this isn't an official rating, but we'll talk about it since everybody's familiar. Even in the EA football game, they've got him rated at 92 for speed and 94 for acceleration. So this kid's going to be fast, right? And we're going to use it. He's out of Baltimore, Maryland, in a high school called Concordia, which I actually am familiar with because for those of you that don't know, I used to live about 13 miles west of Baltimore. So I know, as they say, Balmer. I know all of a lot of the high schools there because while I was there, I would actually go and check out some of the college football there. He went to Monmouth University in 2023, and then he had an All-American season his last season at Monmouth. And then he came to us. So Sean Beckton brought him in. Again, he's an All-American football player. Yes, he's 5'9". He's got speed. He's going to create dilemmas. And that's why he's scary, because he's scary for defenses. It's hard to game plan against that. And you're going to have to give up a weakness somewhere else to play on him, or he will make you pay. Now, it's not just about Scary Derry, but it's also about Alonzo Barnett. And one of the things Alonzo Barnett can do very well is throw the long ball. He one of the things on I don't know if you guys follow this, but if you check out The Dungeon on 3 Sports, Brandon Hellwig's forum that he has on there, they actually had a fan of his former team who is JMU who talked about strengths and weaknesses of Alonzo Barnett III. One of his weaknesses sometimes was he held the ball too long, as something that he worked on and got better at. So he's not going to be that super mobile quarterback that we're used to. He can move, but he's not that guy. He's going to try to find guys in the pocket before the pocket collapses, climb the ladder if he has to, and he'll take a sack. So his worst days are when he's taking sacks. So that's the biggest thing. One of the other biggest things that you heard out of camp he's been in the film room constantly. I don't want to bring any comparisons because Mackenzie Milton is Mackenzie Milton, but a lot of Mackenzie's success came from the film room, and he is his quarterback's coach, right? So him being able to recognize, read Mackenzie, his first year he wasn't trusted with it, obviously, but his second year he was moving alignments, he was calling plays on his own, calling audibles, moving linemen, or not linemen, tight ends, running backs, etc. So that from the things that he saw, that's what you get with Alonzo Barnett, is that he's learned that. He's beat out several P4 players at JMU that transferred to JMU that were starters at other schools that were at P4 schools. So, as far as being a quality quarterback, he's good enough to beat the folks at the P4 that, and it's not just folks that weren't good enough. It was, hey, they lost a job to somebody else, and because of NIL, they needed to go somewhere else, or they didn't land at a spot that time around. So some pretty highly rated quarterbacks. So, again, you put it all together. You've got a long ball thrower, and it's actually kind of funny. I've been watching him throw a little bit. Again, you don't get as much, in practice as you would in watching a little bit of game film. But the way that he releases the ball, he's got this flick before he completes the full motion. So he's got a lot of strength in his arm to be able to throw as far as he does. The concern would be a wobbly pass here and there. But I think that you've got a good 1-2 duo in there that will allow you to, to get the ball down the field and create some separation, which is the challenge that we had last year. Now, you combine that, if you have a deep ball threat with some separation, you're taking guys out of the box, and you got two really good running backs that we have coming back. One of the top rated before he got hurt in the transfer portal with Duke. You've got Tavian Swint that's coming back this year, who was making a lot of noise in the preseason last year. You start adding these pieces together, we've got a pretty good offense as far as our players when you're talking about the skill players. The big question, as always, is going to be the line.
Yep.
From what I understand coming out of camp, the line has been relatively consistent, and they feel like they're not seeing as much rotation because they don't have to. They've got experienced line, although they're a transfer line. They're an experienced line. They've been here through the fall and the spring, even the transfers. Some of the late transfers came in the spring, so they've been together for a while. They're gelling pretty well, and they think they've got a really good starting five that can play most games, bell to bell. But they feel like they have a really good backups. So last year, that wasn't the case. We'll see what happens this year. But it feels like offensively, we should have a little bit of a breakout year. And we'll get some more as it comes out of camp. Trey, unfortunately, will probably not be in camp like he's been in years past because he's got little occupied with a little bundle of burrito that he's got at home. So, but we'll certainly hear some things from the football group chat for sure. All right. So that was Scary Derry. You heard a little bit about him this week. Let's talk about the TDT. So it is the off season. Bless you. It is the off season, which means that there's a lot of moving pieces going on. This is the time where big changes in college football typically happen, whether it's realignment and schools moving conferences, whether it's in rules changes or legislation or whatever. And there's a lot going on right now, but we're going to start with the TDT. For those that don't know, the TDT is the tourist development tax. It's what the lovely people that come visit Central Florida pay to stay in our hotel rooms, etc. Right? And the intent of that is to go back into the community to develop more opportunities to attract more people to Central Florida and thereby increase tax revenue. We went through this process in 2023. It took about a year for the approval process, and then we had to go back, and then we got the approval for the new tower, which is getting ready to be completed. And this time we've gone back to the well. We've asked for $119 million from the Orange County Tourist Development Tax Fund. This is unique to Orlando and Central Florida because we have so many tourists. We have more for Orange County. We have more money available than what most municipalities or cities would. And so this is a unique way to pay for those facilities so that we can then earmark the rest of that money back into acquiring players. So for that, what are we asking for? UCF has 3 primary capital projects that they're intending to ask for. And again, this all went down within the last week where everything was kind of unveiled and unwrapped. So one is a new softball stadium.
Woo!
A planned $24 million venue engineered to host major early season collegiate and professional softball tournaments. So something that's sorely needed. I was there at Clemson when they did their new stadium for about the same amount. Obviously, back then, that money pays you more. I think that was 2021-ish that they were building that.
COVID, yeah.
Yep. So I actually saw that while they were building it. So 24 million doesn't go as far today as it did in 2021 for obvious reasons that we all know about at the pump and in our pockets. But it's still a pretty significant upgrade over what we have. So if we do get that, it's something that, it's a growing sport. Softball is a growing sport. It's growing nationally as far as people watching it. We have a successful program that's been successful for pretty much since its inception, which is about 26, 27 years now. And under Coach Bear, they've been extraordinarily successful there as well. Coach Gillespie was there for a long time. She started the program, was super successful, went back to her roots in Iowa after I think almost 2 decades leading the program. And then and we have Coach Bear, who's been quietly killing it and just won the AUSL national championship with the Utah team of all places. So she's very successful. She's a great coach. It's something that she's been asking for. The ladies, I shouldn't say girls, sorry. The ladies deserve. I think about them as younger because I'm now 45. So it's like, 18, 19-year-old young women. But they deserve it. They performed really, really well. The fans have started showing up a lot more. So they're pushing for that. In addition to that, they're also wanting to upgrade the track and field stadium and also the soccer field. So currently our soccer fields are right next to, there's the practice field, which is over next to the stadium. And then there's the field that we play at, which is right next to the facility where we practice, the indoor practice facility. And we have the track that goes around that complex. And so they're talking about building 2 different locations, and they're also talking about bringing tennis and building some tennis courts back on campus. We're still going to keep the complex that we have out at the UTSA, but the players wouldn't have to go back and forth to Lake Nona to practice. And that's really what they're doing. So a whole new complex. There's been some land cleared. If you look at the development plans that are out there, it's already in the plans for the campus strategic plan. And soccer has been growing in popularity, and the soccer program has been doing fairly well as well. So that's the next 3 projects. that are coming up, and that's a total. And there's some other ancillary improvements to the football stadium to continue it. And then the other building that they want to continue in the village is they've got the Hagel Gateway going in, but they want to get the coaches building built that's there along the parking lot as well. So lots of opportunity there. The things that UCF has going for it is, one, our campus is a showcase for Orlando. You know, whether you're winning or losing, we get a lot of exposure for Orlando. You know, I know people don't think about this, but when we're playing on national TV or even at ESPN2 or Fox 2, all of those people are looking at that. If you have ever watched us play BYU, they fill the stadium, and guess what? They bring their families. And that equals, they don't just come for the football game. They come to go to Disney. They come to go everywhere else. So there's the TV aspect, there's the commercial aspect of it, and there's the number of people that we actually bring to the stadium. And that's not just for football. We're tapping into softball and everything else. So,
yep.
You know, yes, you know, some people may scoff at that, but it does actually create an economic imprint for UCF. 25% has to be set aside for Orlando, and basically for us to advertise through, and that's a separate side, right? But we're providing advertisement. We're bringing butts to seats and people to the area to enjoy UCF athletics. And so that's the hitch. The other thing that's gone really well, and hats off to Terry for this, we got the project done. The last time they gave us money, $90 million, was for the tower. And we got it done on time and very quickly. A lot of times politicians want to show that, hey, I did that, right? And in order for them to do that, the project needs to get done. Yep. And it needs to get done quickly within their cycle so they can point to it and say, hey, I got that done. So UCF actually was invited to apply again. Now, does that mean that UCF will get it this time? You know, do they still believe in the project? Who knows? But I think we've got a leg up to be able to do that. So there's $3 billion total in community requests. UCF even at 100, a little over 100 million and 119 million. That's relative to our footprint and our impact, both economically and everything else, on the city and the county. That's a reasonable ask. They're not asking for, quote unquote, a ton of money. And we've been successful in the past. So here's where we are. They're in the process, and if those of you that followed along last time, they have a task force. That's a citizen advisory task force. It's made up of local government people and put together that evaluate and make a recommendation to the TDT on which projects should go and which should not. So they're going through 15-minute presentations. Our presentation, they started last week. They went Wednesday and Thursday. But our presentation isn't until August 5th. So this coming Wednesday, one of the latter presentations from 9:45 to 10:15 to the task force. Once they have those sessions and complete those sessions, then the next step is for the Board of Commissioners to then receive those recommendations from that citizen advisory board and then make those decisions to distribute that cash. They said they learned a lot from the last one. The last one stretched out for a very long time, much longer than they were expecting. And so around the fall in October is when we're expecting to get a handle on whether we will have those funds approved. Now, again, those funds, just like with the tower, don't come all at once, right? So what they do is they pay a certain amount based on the revenue and future years revenue over that they've committed to us. I think for the tower, it's 10 million over 9 years. And what that allows us to do, like 10 million per year over 9 years for 90 million total. What that allows us to do is to go get a bond. And so the TDT is not giving us that money in one lump sum. We go get a bond that's backed by this fund, which we do pay interest on. And then that's paid back by those payments that we get from the TDT. So if for whatever reason there's a year where there's a shortage, which it's more than likely there's not, unless something like COVID happens, then the school can cover it. So it's low risk for the borrower, it's low risk for us, and allows us to get capital improvements with conceivably very little out-of-pocket expense with the exception of interest on the bond. So that's a great way and a unique proposition that Orlando has versus versus a lot of other major cities that are out there. So kudos to UCF and kudos to that. Wow. That was a lot of government work, but I wanted you guys to understand what we were doing. All right. Going back to things that actually matter to us today. A judge, Charlotte Sweeney of the U.S. District Court of Colorado, has granted a class-wide preliminary injunction, which means there was a class that filed the lawsuit, class action lawsuit, and she has basically granted a preliminary injunction so that anyone that was in the high school class of 2022 who exhausted their 4 seasons of eligibility will get another year, because the new legislation allows players for 5 for 5, right?
Yep.
This class would not benefit from that. And previous years, they got the benefit based off of the extra COVID year. So this class kind of was left in a lurch. What does that mean for UCF? That means there's some players in baseball that could come back. Yep. Basketball, we're pretty stuck because most of those guys moved on. Riley Kugel was someone you could think about that would benefit from that. Unfortunately, he's moved on to Summer League, I believe, or G League, one of the two. I can't remember. So he's playing there. Stillwell will benefit from it, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, but he won't be back in the black and gold. And there are others, but most of them have already found spots because it's so late in the game for this injunction to go through. But there are opportunities for football players. Nigel Kelly actually wanted to come back for another year.
Really?
He wanted to, but again, he had to make decisions back in combine time. So in order to be draft eligible, you have to
agent, all that.
Yep, exactly. And you have to be you have to give up your eligibility for college to be able to be draft eligible. Yep. So unfortunately, there is a world where Nigel Kelly could have came back this year and played another year for UCF football. So at this stage, I do think there'll be opportunities, but there won't be a lot of opportunities, but there will be some transfer portal opportunities. And that's where I think it's going to make a bigger difference because all these kids that couldn't participate are now going to be able to enter their names in the transfer portal, and most rosters are filled. So it'll be interesting to see the quality of player that'll be out there that wasn't just quite good enough to either make it to the MLB where they wanted or in the NBA, et cetera, right? And we actually have, let's go ahead and transition and talk a little bit about Stillwell, and we'll come back to this. One of the things that happened recently was Jamichael Stillwell, fan favorite for UCF basketball, tough, hard-nosed player. He said that if he got another year of eligibility, he promised that he would come back, promised to the fans, put a post out there on his own, that he would come back to UCF. So He took it a step further when he filed a lawsuit in Orange County, Florida. I think it was Orange County, Orange or Seminole. It was in Central Florida. Pretty sure it was Orange County, Florida. Basically seeking an injunction to get another year because he didn't play. His case was based on the fact, basically like everybody else, I could earn money with this. The NCAA is being arbitrary and basically taking a source of revenue and my ability to make revenue away from me. Yeah. So I want another year of eligibility. He went so far as to say that he has opportunities and that UCF, meaning Johnny Dawkins, was holding a roster spot for him. He said that in the lawsuit. So when it looked like they were going to get the injunction, the Texas Red Raiders, of course, have swooped in and done what they've done with a few other people because they are A, short on players, and B, have money to spend. And their top guy, Toppin, is still hurt. And guess who beat the Red Raiders last year? UCF, right? So, yep. So, number one, Johnny Dawkins was trying to do the right thing by Jamichael Stillwell. Number two, Jamichael Stillwell said he was going to come back the entire time if he got an extra year. So he held a roster spot, which means that we held money back from our NIL that we could have competed for somebody else and a roster spot that we could have tried to go get someone else to fill Jamichael Stillwell's spot. I would be okay with that if we were gambling and we knew he was coming back. But we gambled, and now he's not coming back because he's going to go back to the Red Raiders. He actually put a post out there on Instagram apologizing. So good on him for apologizing. But at the same time, and I don't blame him, but don't put a tweet out there promising you're going to come back. Don't put put UCF as a reason why you should be allowed the extra year of eligibility and that UCF was your home and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. Granted, what I think probably happened is his agent probably was negotiating in the background and kind of pushed him at the end. But at the same time, that took away a roster spot and NIL money from UCF. That is by definition injury. So Johnny Dawkins tried to do the right thing. It would have been great if it worked out, but it didn't. However, now that we know that that's the case and this injunction has been filed and granted in the state of Colorado through the class action lawsuit, that opens the door to other people who may have been high level players, but not high enough to make it in the NBA to come back for another year of college basketball. And we're in a unique position to go ahead and try to acquire some of that talent. So over the next couple weeks, it'll be interesting to see. UCF may try to shoot for the stars and grab a basketball player to shore up that empty roster spot that Jamichael Stillwell left. So look out for that over the next week. But that'll affect all of the teams, so baseball, etc. All right, next thing on the agenda, more stuff, this time from the Florida Board of Governors meeting at UCF. Florida Board of Governors Task Force on College Athletics is scheduled next week to go over a long list of items that could impact the state's football programs, such as UF, FSU, UCF, and USF. Some of the things that are coming out ahead of that meeting that they're going to be talking about. So here are some of the proposals that they'll be evaluating and how they affect UCF. A sports betting tax or user fee that could be used to fund athletics. So basically taking if you're going to bet on sports and you have a user fee or you have taxes for every dollar that you spend on betting on college athletics, we all see how well that's going. They're going to take that dollar and funnel it back to the state institutions to allow them to bone up and support their player acquisition or just to support their athletics program. So that's on the table. They're requesting the Florida legislature to authorize a multi-state cap on salary or compact on salary cap, transfer rules, basically all the things that are being legislated at the Senate level, at the state level. They're also talking about increasing the athletic fees charged to students and remove the current caps on how much those fees can go up. So in other words, passing the buck, and UCF's used to that. We've supported our football program consistently with that. And it's actually an advantage for us because we have so many students, we wouldn't have to raise it up as much as others may. And add a state fee to concessions sold at sporting events. I don't like that one. We already pay way too much for soda and food and, our $17 hot dogs. I'm just joking with that. But like, hey, if I go buy the Cuban sandwich deal that they have at the basketball games or at the football games, it's going to cost you $14 to $15 to do that. Right. So I'm not necessarily as much of a fan on that. Student fees, I'm not sure UCF wants to cross that bridge, but it does allow us the momentum and movement to increase that if that happens. More importantly, instituting a salary cap and transfer rules within the state. And then the last thing that they're going to be evaluating is protecting and reinstating rivalry games by creating a series sponsored by major global brands. Sounds great, right? Maybe UCF will finally be able to get in a rotation with FSU and UF and be required to play. Well, no. There's a certain someone called Rob Higgins, that's over the athletic director over at the Cal U, that has been trying to push this narrative of protecting a rivalry game with UCF. Ha ha ha, plot twist. I mean, how long were they too good for us, right? Trying to get us to basically play them because they've got a stadium to fill with about a 12 to 15,000 person attendance and an AAC schedule. So they know that fans will travel for that. We don't want to sign up for that and be locked into a rivalry game with the Cows. If the only way that I see that being a improvement for UCF is if we get the extra revenue from a sponsorship by a quote unquote global brand, think Mickey Mouse or someone of that ilk. And we're promised a rotation with UF, FSU, maybe Miami, then I would sign up for that. But if they're talking about locking us into a rivalry game with the Cows, yes, it's a great experience. Yes, it was fun, but we shouldn't permanently be hitched to Cal U and be basically with the SEC going to a 9-game schedule this year, be pushed out on never being able to play UF or anybody else, because that's essentially what that's going to do. You're not going to be able to ever play FSU or UF or anybody else forever if you get locked in with a rivalry, or at least on a significant period of time for a contract of 10 years or so, if you're locked in playing with the Cows every year. So I'm going to ask you, as a former player, as someone who was in the heated rivalries where the AD's tires were supposedly slashed and our AD had to give him a ride back to Cal U, where shakes were thrown on Cal fans, etc. What do you think about that? Should we sign up for a deal if it pays us extra cash to play Cal U for extra cash and basically lock ourselves out of playing UF and FSU? I mean, there is an argument to be made that they wouldn't play us anyway, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I guess, how much are we talking? Unrealistically, if they're paying us $20 million every time to play them, I would play them. if
Well,
that
it wouldn't
was
be 20 million. I can't imagine that we're going to get 20
Yeah.
million
so,
for that.
so that would be probably the only option I would want to play them every year, is if that was the other end of the deal. I love that rivalry. I think when we were playing, it was, I wouldn't say balanced, but it felt more balanced. Like, it felt like they were fielding a good roster every year. It felt like we were
Dude, we
fielding
were both in the AAC. That's not the
and
case anymore.
correct. I think it's just different. And I think even in other sports, it was a lot more balanced. Like, I remember softball, it felt like they were always a perennial team. Like, just when I was there, like, it felt like we were more, I think we were the more upside program, but just overall it was equal. You know, we were recruiting a lot of the similar talent. Our teams were similar year in and year out. I think we were better, but just collectively, it was similar. I think now we've kind of, everything's about timing. I think at the time where we took our leap, they kind of fell, and that was where, like, conference splitting, all of that. So, like, that gap feels way bigger than the time frame it happened. You know, it feels like we've created a 20-year gap almost in a what, 10 years, not even 10 years. Like, less than 10 years. Like,
4 years.
Yeah, like, it felt like we've created a humongous gap since we've taken the leap to the Big 12. I mean, in every aspect. And they fell off around similar time, you know, and I think that's where I'm kind of not interested in it, barring $20 million a year they pay us. So I would rather get locked into one of the big, like, UF, FSU, Miami.
I wouldn't mind getting locked in. We're not gonna get locked in to play FSU or UF every year. Number one, Florida legislature stepped in on behalf of the Noles, which, by the way, do you know where the Florida legislature resides? Is Tallahassee, right?
Correct.
No, Tallahassee. Let's get it right. But you know, that's where they reside, and so they stepped in and made it mandatory for UF to play FSU every year. Like, that was required by legislature. It still is in place to this day.
Yep.
Right. So the problem I have with this is that college, like, in the state of Florida, and with a 9-game schedule, you're only going to get an FSU UF rivalry. Miami is a private school.
Yep.
So they may or may not want to participate. If they want to participate, I'm sure that would make the deal more valuable. And having 4 Power 4 schools, I'd sign up for that. Although the times we've played Miami, they've been some fans, Miami fans. They're Miami fans. All right, go ahead.
Yeah,
what were you going to say?
For them to get involved, they would need like they're going to want to sweeten the pot on their end. Otherwise, there's no real point for them to get involved in that sense.
Well, I mean, we had a rivalry series signed with them. They have played at UCF before, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. So the last, we had a deal that was cooking, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, where Scott Hogan got involved from the Orlando Sports Commission and basically tried to interject and basically talk Miami out of it in order to get them to come and play at the Citrus Bowl. And UCF walked away from that deal, but it was going to be a home series for UCF before they got involved. So there's that. I think if Miami's involved and we have a home and home rivalry game year after year, I mean, that helps Miami because they're in the ACC right now too. It's a drivable game. If we can, Miami's good right now. I think it would help us with Florida recruiting if we're playing Miami every year.
For sure.
So if we could do something like that and it was a Power 4 school and we get locked into rivalry, cool with that. But I think Miami would want to make sure that they had a roster spot. So I think the best solution would be to rotate.
I agree.
The legislature would need to change their stance on UFFSU. They could expand that.
That's the
Yeah,
that's the deal breaker.
well,
Ultimately.
they could expand it, and they could say, hey, all 4 Power 4 schools get to operate within that, because now you've got ACC representation, you've got SEC representation,
Big 12.
um, and Big 12, right? So 3 out of the 4 major conferences are playing there. All you have left is the Big 10. So if they come back and they say, hey, we're going to amend this, and we have a rotation between these 4 schools, and we've got a big time sponsor that's going to cover that, that's great for the state of Florida. It's great for the 4 schools involved. And I think it would be enough to get a TV deal on top of this global sponsorship that they're talking about. So I think that's a great idea.
I
We
think
just absolutely do not want to get stuck with the cows.
Yeah.
Because
I think there's a lot of creativity that when you have 4, I wouldn't say like 4 Power 4 schools in one state, you can get so, in my opinion, you could get so creative with like the week 0 games. Like it, like I mean, I know you see it. Like at least when I grew up, I remember like opening weekend, early of the beginning of the year, the best schools played. That was like their one big game was like early in the year because you get in the conference late in the year. Like you want to set yourself. I know it was like Big 10 versus SEC year 1 or at the beginning of the year. Big 12 versus SEC, SEC versus ACC, ACC, Big 12. Like, we should be able to do that every year. I think a couple of games, but obviously, I think at the beginning of the year, you should be able to get that mix just to kind of see where you're at in Florida. And not just, Florida, where it's rare you have 4 power. Texas, that state can do the same thing.
Carolina has 4 power schools.
Georgia and Bama, like, do a little Georgia Tech, Auburn, Bama versus, like, you can do that at least in the South and like these bigger California. You can be able to do all these kind of.
Dude, nobody's going to show up to those games either way in California.
Probably not. But just like
UCLA, USC is just as empty as it ever would be. So I think Cali's the outlier.
Yeah, but like ultimately, just like you have enough to where you should be able to draw at least early in the year those rivalry games. You can stoke up right because, like, to me. I think while college football is college football and is great, I think a little bit of what made it amazing is kind of dying off with the NIL. I think you bring back these in-state rivalries and create some new ones, like because the times have changed. Obviously, like we're not the little school that we were 20 years ago. Times have changed. So like, create some new spark amongst college football in a time where it feels like it's just a money-driven sport. Like I think that's what, at least in the state of Florida, I'll just speak for that. That's what we should be trying to do. We are a premier state for football. Let's keep it that way and stoke some rivalries. All these kids want to play each other anyway. Like you go talk to any of these kids, most of these kids that play at UF, I know the upper higher ups don't. All of these, we all talk to each other. We talk to everybody at FSU. We talk to everybody at UF. We talk to everybody at UM because a lot of us grew up together. We want to play each other. It's not like, oh, we're too good to play. That's never how any of the players feel that way. It's all higher ups that are making these decisions. It's, I think coaches being political and things like that.
Well, I mean, for a school, it's, think about it this way. It's the front doorstep for a school. It's their way of showing, hey, we don't play those guys. We're bigger than them.
Yeah.
To keep because they're competing for students, right? So you want to be the premier football team. I think where it wins too is for all the municipalities, right? Yeah. So let's say you've got a game. All that money stays in the state. Everybody who comes and visits and does that, it all stays in the state. Every municipality makes money. It never goes out of the state. So for the state, it's a win. For the local municipalities, you're always going to have a Florida team, which means you're going to have people that are in a drivable distance, right? That will travel for these games.
I know people fans will travel across the state for any of these games.
Well, even Miami, you've got the Bright Line that goes down to Miami, right? So like, think about this. Yeah. You have a weekend, you take the Bright Line down to Miami, right? You've got an Uber that takes you to your hotel. You spend the weekend in Miami. Yep. You take the Bright Line back. Now do the reverse.
Easy.
Right? So
Easy.
it makes
And
a whole
even,
heck
like,
of a lot
I
of
know
sense.
I know so many fans down here. They drive up, like when plays in Tallahassee, they all drive up to Tallahassee because it's early in the year. That's why I'm saying, like, early in the year, everybody thinks they're going to be a great team. You know, like, there's not like, oh, this team sucks, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, we're not having a good year for whatever reason.
You mean like
Early,
FSU going to be a top 25 team all the
Yeah, I
time, and
mean,
then they end up being like 1-12 or whatever,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, shoot, FSU. You would have talked to me. FSU before the end of September was making the college football playoff. Like, even though we know how that turned out, imagine UCF playing a 3-0 FSU fresh off a beat. Like, that's what the kind of excitement, at least for me. I'm looking at the excitement aspect of it. Like, that's when everybody thinks they're going to be good. Now, do you always end up good? No. Will that, you look back and will that be a win that you're like, I should be in the college football playoff type win? Maybe. You never know. Sometimes it could, sometimes it not.
Listen, fans will travel to fans will travel to Tampa, right? To go watch. But listen, they'll go travel to Tampa to go watch UCF play the Cows, right?
1,000%.
But they won't travel back from Tampa to Orlando because their fan base is just not built yet.
Correct.
So, would that help with our recruiting? Yes. Is it the Tampa's hometown team thing again? Yes. You know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But what wins and what puts butts in seats for Orlando, for Miami, for FSU, in Tallahassee, and for Gainesville is schools within the state.
Yep.
So, you know, no matter what you think, and I'm going to say this too, we collectively need to be a better football program and get back to the way that we were, because that's part of the reason they wouldn't want to do it either. Because if you do, I hate to say this, if you're UF and you're going to be ranked in the, you know, near the top 25 all year long because you're in the SEC and you spend a bunch of money on 5 stars, no matter how good you are or not good you are, if you go at the beginning of the season and you lose against UCF that ends up going 4-8, right? Terrible loss.
Yep.
Right? It completely almost at the beginning knocks you out. So UCF, we have to get back to our winning ways. However, no way should we take a deal where the Cows are a permanent rival.
Exactly.
Right now, this is all just state schools, but if they could coax Miami to go into it, it would be good for everybody.
Yep.
And speaking of FSU, I think their head coach is, you saw who they hired recently, right? A certain Texas head coach.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Herman, right?
Yeah.
So they're trying everything they can there. I think they're out of money. They're stuck.
If money wasn't an issue, he would have been gone years ago.
Yeah. So I guess that's what happens when you pay Willie Taggart and everybody else, Jimbo Fisher, and can't do that. You can only do that with so many coaches before you got to stick with one.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, getting back to what we said, I think that could be a good thing, but I think that UCF should agree to that only if it's not a permanent rivalry with the Cows.
Yeah.
Agreed. Would like a rivalry with them, but don't want to be locked in, especially if it's for the sake of money, because it does nothing for UCF. And I know it's the same argument that the Cows had. I get it, but we're in a different era of college football. Upward mobility isn't where it used to be. If anything, the Senate with the Protect College Sports Act, which is another thing that's going on right now, they're in the middle of that. They did not get it to the floor of the Senate for a vote, which makes it less likely. And a big reason for that is the Big Ten and the SEC. Because they're trying to, you heard Michigan, their president come out and basically said, hey, we spent a lot of time and money becoming Michigan and getting this big contract from these TV folks. Why should we share it? Right?
Fair, but that's a slippery slope. You start.
It's what we have today and why we are where we are today with NIL and everything else, right? So that's another cap that they're talking about putting on there for state schools. So that would be interesting. There's transfer rules. But I don't know.
The SEC people, I don't know, they're trying to make a bid to where if there's a 12-team college football playoff like now, they want half of those spots.
They've been trying that for a while, but that isn't going to happen.
It's now, not. But they're actively trying. That's why they're threatening. Oh, we're just going to branch off. I don't know if like their coaches are now they're engaging, saying, "Oh, we're just going to branch off from this because of blah blah."
Well, what they said was they'll go autonomous again, which is the same thing they did when we went from the BCS to the playoff.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. They have enough votes, just enough in the Power Four, which is why I don't think the Power Four will ever get any smaller than what it is now. Right? Unless they can teams wise for votes, because the way they have the votes set up, right? And this is part of what they did as being part of the autonomous conference. Guess what? Your vote counts more than what a regular non-power school does. Right? And the argument is we bring in the money to the sport that supports everybody else.
Yep.
Well, Greg Sankey was not very happy because the Senate basically called him to the carpet and said, hey guys, you either do this or we're going to do it to you. And so his response was, hey, we're going to go autonomous if you do this, which means we're going to stay within the NCAA structure, right? But we're going to separate again, just how the power came to be.
Yep.
We're going to do the same thing, except make it a power 2.
Yep.
Problem for them is, if they do that, the Senate has already told them, the Senate has already told them, or is promising and dangling the carrot that the NCAA will always have that tax exempt status against the players and the ability to be immune to player-led lawsuits at that point. So 2017 national champions weighs in. He says, everything becomes easier once we start winning, scheduling, revenue, etc. 100% agree with you. That's why I'm calling UCF out, calling ourselves out, right? Got to start winning. Figure it out, Terry.
Have to.
Right? Like, it's great. It's great that we're getting the TDT funds and we're building new facilities and stuff, but you got to win.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping. Go ahead.
I mean, I was just saying, like, the whole, like, up and coming program thing is, I mean, we're pushing 10 years now, like
we're still considered that, though, when you look at us compared to the rest of the power. Like, when the rest of the power conferences look at us, and, one of the things people always say, it's not the sleeping giant anymore because we're in the power schools, right?
Yeah.
We don't get that moniker anymore.
Can't say that anymore.
But it is something that is said that if you look at all the metrics, it's still that conversation, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. And I told you guys this.
Our entry to the limelight was so explosive and so, like, I don't know. I could be naive. We took, I wouldn't say all of college football, but like we had a dent in college football, which I don't think a lot of programs can say that about. Like, longer tenured programs that we have don't have that impact in college football. I don't think they can say that, like what we did in that span. And I think just looking back, we haven't really, I wouldn't even say reached those heights, but even come close, if that makes sense. Like,
not since moving up to the power conference. Now we've made noise. We've made noise in every other sport, though, including basketball.
Agreed. Yeah, but we know the moneymaker, the eyes that drive the boat is football.
Do you want to know what the average roster expense was last year for a Big 12 basketball team?
I know we were at the bottom. I can tell you that.
It doesn't matter what we were. What was the average for Big 12?
I mean, you're talking, we're the SEC of basketball, so you're talking Kansas, you're talking BYU paid a number 1 overall pick, millions.
What was the average for a roster?
I have no idea.
So it was $8 million last year. what do you think the average roster spend is this year?
Probably more. It's only going up, right?
$16 million.
Yeah.
Do you know what UCF's roster spend is for this year?
What was it last year?
I think it was $3.5–4 million.
What was it this year?
$6 million.
Yeah, see, like,
so
we're not even at what the average last year was, and the average doubled.
Right, but that's my point, right? So number one, we were playing with one hand tied behind our back. Number one, because we didn't have as much revenue coming in, right, as everybody else did. Even Utah, Arizona State, Colorado, they all got full shares from day one. We didn't. We're not the only ones. UC, BYU, UH, and us. We got half shares. Now we've got this academic year was the first year we're getting full shares.
Yep.
So that's great. However, at the end of the day, that only goes so far, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about, yes, NIL is important, but it's also the inconsistency in the quarterback position that we've had, right? It's also the game day coaching that we've had has not been great. The system just didn't work. It was outdated. Andrew and I argued about Gus Malzahn from day one when that news broke live on air when we were doing the radio show, right?
Yep.
So, there's that. So now we've got Scott Frost. He's coming back for year 2. He is going to be able to compete on the football side. We're about middle of the pack on the football side on expenditures. So we've got a roster that should be competitive.
That's good. Yeah.
Everybody's expecting us to have a 6 or 7 win season. Honestly, last year we could have had a 7 to 8 win season. We were this close. The biggest thing that I think pundits are forgetting this year, and you never hear about this, is we played 3 different quarterbacks at different games. I think we actually ended up paying 4. 100%, right?
It'd be different if you had like a starting quarterback 7 weeks straight, and then he gets hurt, and then you kind of fall off a cliff. So none
of them were like 5-star can't miss like quarterbacks, right? None of them were. Yeah. So I think that says a lot, and I think it says a lot for the coming year. But we have to compete. I do think we restocked the defense. I don't think our strengths will be the same, but we have a strong secondary. We're bringing a lot of returning starters back there. If you go look at the stats, our linebacking core is strong. I think stronger than it was last year. Our defensive line, biggest question mark, and specifically a defensive end, because that was a strength for us last year.
You lost a first-round pick and another all-conference player. That's inevitable.
Yeah. But even at defensive tackle, right? Yeah. So
exactly,
we lost a certain somebody that came to us from over UF that went and got a bag, right?
Yep.
Name starts John. So anyway, so that's the biggest question mark on defense. Offensively, we talked about that at the top of the show. So for those of you that are just joining us, watch the replay. Scary Derry, what he can do to offenses, what that means for defenses. We explained all of that as to, how you have to shade, playing the boundary, how you have to adjust, playing single high versus double, how it affects the nickel position. All of that stuff leads to offensive opportunities. And we've got some running backs this year as well. So I'm excited about that. But as George O'Leary always said, your favorite guy who with 3 A's, the football starts with the lines, and the closer you get to the ball, right?
Yep.
And so the lines are going to be the big question mark this year, but I do think we're good on the defensive line. Offensive line, I like the number of snaps that we have coming back, even though they didn't play together. Now, going back to this Protect College Sports Act A couple of other things they're talking about is capping it now at $48.8 million per school. So that means a revenue sharing salary cap going to 48.8, which is 27.5 million athlete retention pool is what they're calling it. So in order to sign your roster back, your most important players back, you're going to have 27.5 million to do that. And then 21.3 to share from the program. So basically 27.5 million. Now, the good thing is that still caps it somewhere. So we have a goal to shoot for. That's a whole heck of a lot of money. Yeah. It also makes me question when we shut down the our NIL program in anticipation of it being shut down.
What?
Yeah. You don't remember that conversation? So Terry Mahajer came out and said, hey, when this new clearinghouse came out, they were going to do away with the NIL, and then they shut down our NIL, our third-party NIL programs. You don't remember that?
Absolutely.
It was about 6 to 8 months before all of this was to go in place, and then they're like, just kidding. We forced the NCAA to... Yeah.
Okay.
So that needs, if this goes through, that needs a shot in the arm. Yeah. So the big thing that they're arguing about now is how NIL fits into the cap, right?
To me, I think cap is good, but if you have Texas Tech just, hey, here's $1 million NIL deal, what can anybody do? Not just us.
Well, the conference commissioners are saying no to all endorsement deals with any sponsors that sponsor the university.
Okay.
So if you've got someone like Cody Campbell out at Texas Tech, right, that's already giving money or giving sponsorships through his school,
so you can't give NIL deals to players.
Exactly. So I think that's a step in the right direction. The only way that I see this happening, and this is kind of where they're fighting right now, right?
Yeah.
The NCAA wants antitrust restrictions. Part of the reasons NIL is in place is because the antitrust lawsuits, right? And we've been in a lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. So the NCAA is saying we want antitrust, blanket antitrust. In exchange for that, we're going to put a cap on these pools, these salary cap, so that they don't keep rising. Because guess what? Alabama competed with Nick Saban at the helm and his ability to recruit and what he did in putting players in the NFL and winning championships. Once he went away, Alabama now has to compete. DeBoer has to compete with everybody else, like Texas, who's in their same conference now. That's worth the most out of any SEC school, right? And they can't outspend them.
Nope.
So
and they can't sell. They can't outspend Texas, and they can't sell what Saban did with what Kirby Smart's doing at UGA. So they're at a double disadvantage.
Exactly. And so now even Alabama's on the side of let's throw a cap up. Let's throw a cap on here because we can't compete.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Alabama can't compete. They were the kings of the handshake deals, right? I mean, you had the cocaine cowboys out in Miami, right? Making it rain. Yeah. But they're saying, hey, put a cap on it. So what they're arguing about is because the Senate's trying to enforce a cap, they're saying, hey, if you're going to do that, we're cool with it. We actually like that idea, but you got to give us antitrust protection. So that's one thing that's out there. The other thing is broadcast rights. So the ability to pool your broadcast rights, right? So it's funny because it used to be the NCAA at the beginning owned all the broadcast rights for everybody. So one of the ways, if you did something wrong, hey, we're going to keep you off the broadcast this week. You can't do that anymore. The school sued, basically said, hey, we can't make money on our own rights because you're making us pool them, right? So they sued, and I think it was Oklahoma that led the charge on that. It was Oklahoma and Nebraska, I think. And so they went and got their own broadcast rights back, which is how we ended up with where we are today. Well, now they're saying, hey, we want to pool them. So what the power schools are saying is, we got these TV deals on our own, and I'm sure ESPN is seeing that because they went all in on the SEC. And oh, by the way, if you've not been watching social media this week, some pretty hilarious things coming out about how certain ESPN personalities are trying to justify how I think the latest thing was that the SEC schools are at a disadvantage and are not going to as many games because they play each other. Well, guess what? When they play out of conference, when they play us, when they play other conferences like that, that's before they play the SEC schools. So if you're losing to those schools, it ain't because you're beating each other up, right? So at the end of the day, the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to limit whether they are participating in that or not if a certain number of schools decide that they want to pool their broadcast rights. I don't think the Big 12 will ever participate in that if the SEC and the Big 10 don't. And I don't think they will because, I mean, quite frankly, even from my seat, it's un-American. But it is the way to to make sure that there's more equity in college football.
Yeah.
And that the media pooling is strictly voluntary. So that's the other thing. Mandatory roster minimums. So another thing that they're doing to prevent schools from cutting smaller sports is to fund the rest of the non-revenue sports scholarships at the 24 and 25 levels. So basically, what Stanford's talking about doing, or some of these other schools, which is they're slashing sports in order to make the money for the football rosters, and then merger restrictions. So here's an interesting one. Anybody who's generating over 700 million, that's the big thing. Is they're trying to stop them from acquiring entire conference media rights contracts. So what's happening is you've got these like Utah, who's mortgaged their soul, right? No, they have literally.
Yeah.
And their rights. They're trying to prevent private investment to come in and actually leverage their own. We're at a point where bigger conferences can use their extra money to buy the media rights for other conferences. So they're trying to prevent that as well. And then lastly, because think of FSU and Clemson and North Carolina, if they wanted to get to the SEC and Big Ten without doing that, because they still have to leave their media rights with the ACC. There was that big lawsuit out there. They know what the price for that is. Could the SEC or Big Ten conceivably buy out those media rights from the ACC and then move those properties over to them so that and then just basically a bigger buyout at some point for them to acquire those schools when they need to? Because if this goes through where they're saying zero movement for conferences that have 700 million or more in assets among schools, that would create stability, but it would create, it would prevent the ability for those schools to move at the same time. For us, I kind of like the fact that it means that Cal U probably wouldn't be able to move up. But they're trying to limit that on G6 programs moving up. So that's one of the other caveats that they're fighting about. And Notre Dame, the school that doesn't want to play ball. The Big Ten wants a carve out. Basically what they're trying to push for is if a school has been independent for 5 years, they can move to the Big Ten. So they're basically trying to leave a door open for the Fighting Irish to join the Big Ten because they're still trying to pursue them. So that's everything that's going on there. We've talked about Stillwell. The last thing I want to talk about is Florida Gulf Coast University has signed with UCF for a game, on men's basketball game that's scheduled for November 2nd, 2026. They paid $90K for that, which is interesting. That was that cheap to get a game with Florida Gulf Coast. But we've added them to the schedule. Yep, it was the first time we've seen that. Last but not least, I want to give a little bit of listener love. I know we've been away, and I apologize. I want to say that again. I had an unexpected move that happened way faster than what I thought was going to happen, which means in a week's time, I had to pack all my stuff, get out, get it, organize it, like a U-Haul, all that stuff, get it down to Orlando, get it in storage, within the span of about a week and a half. So I apologize that we missed last week, but I do want to give a shout out to listener love. There's a ton more people that joined and followed. Unfortunately, most of you have set yourselves to private. Someone that didn't was Slade Humphrey. Sorry, Slade, for not calling you out earlier, but welcome to the squad. We had a lot of conversation last time about we had a question, right? Which schools, if there was consolidation, which schools in the SEC, the ACC, and the Big Ten, if UCF had to make I think we set the cutoff at 60, would we make that cutoff? And which schools would we be above? So we talked about that the last time we were together. Local B2 says that he was involved in last week's conversation, and we love it when you guys comment. Don't agree with almost any of the who is getting taken over us. We're near the bottom in viewership, bottom 5, and we have not had major success in the top sports recently. Additionally, people know that we do not have the same level of NIL support as 75% of the rest of the conference. So that's not true, local B2. We just talked about that. We're mid-level on that. In fact, we're above K-State at the moment as far as what we're spending in rev share and NIL. Winning will help some of this, but as it stands, we're on the outside looking in my opinion, at least, which is a valid point. We don't have the history to help us look past our struggles currently. And that goes back to the earlier point we were talking about. Here's looking at you, Terry. Shiny new towers are great, but we got to win some football games, bro. And then our response was, thank you for watching and commented. Do you think anyone in the Big 12 or the ACC would be taken below us? Because he was pretty pessimistic on that. I think some of this is potential or trending argument in play. I look forward to chatting about this in our next show. He says, yes, I definitely think that there are several schools that might be taken below us. Maybe I'm ill-informed on what a potential Super League could look like. I definitely think we have possibly the most potential that hasn't shown out of any school. And that goes right back to the argument that we were talking about earlier, right? But a year to 2 years ago, what I said was this next contract cycle is going to be extremely important because we don't know what's going to happen with the ACC. Yep. So either there's going to be consolidation, or we're going to absorb schools from the ACC, or you've got Greg Sankey openly last week saying, "Hey, we're not going to separate and create a Super League. We're just going to create an autonomous conference," which is essentially the same thing with the tax break, right? So, we've got to make sure now that we've got the dollar bills, we're on par with everybody else. We've got to do what we always do, which is every 8 years move up. Every conference we've ever been in, even in going back to, except for independent, because that was tough. Every conference we've been in, we've moved up within 8 years. And we've dominated and played for conference championships and shorter than that. And that's the reason we were able to move up, right? So we're now approaching the 4-year mark. Granted, the Power Four is harder. We're not playing against the same people. We can't dominate. We're not recruiting at the highest level. We don't have the biggest budget in the league, which we've always had in the previous leagues, right? So we've got to figure out a way to win. And it's got to happen because 2030 is coming up, which is when our next one is coming up, and 2035 is when the ACC is coming up. The ACC already knows, and the Big Ten and the SEC, who's trying to preserve the upward mobility of schools, already knows how much the exit's going to be for North Carolina, FSU, Miami, UVA, et cetera, right? So when that happens, it won't be as bad as the situation Cal U finds itself right now. Thank God. I think the ladder's been pulled up for that. Sorry, guys. If you're a Cal fan and you happen across this, I'm not just a hater. I just a lot of bad memories of how you treated us. So you're just not there, and you don't have the fan base, right? We spent a long time building up that fan base. You just don't have it. So that ladder, I think, has effectively been pulled up. However, we want to stay competitive. And if we can't spend the money and we don't have the money, which we don't, right? We got to make up for it on the field. So however we need to figure that out, that's what we pay an AD. That's what we pay a head coach. And I know you've got a soft spot for Scott Frost. We've seen that he's got the ability to do it. And I do think he's got his head straight after the Nebraska experience. And I think that Nebraska experience messed with his head. And his dad was dying. But I'm not going to make excuses for him because there was a lot of hate vitriol talked about Scott Frost. But I do see progress, and I do think he can rehab himself, right?
Yep.
And at least he said nice things about us, unlike Alex Golish, who was in Tampa this past weekend and did not give any local interviews because he knew he was going to be trashed by anybody in Tampa for leaving the cows and the way he left the cows. So
and taking everybody.
Well, we warned him. I literally warned everyone, even cow fans, right? So anyway, and OSU was looking at Alex Golish the previous year for a head coach. And I went on our sister podcast and told them what type of person he was. So anyway, point is, we have to win. We have to bring it up. I think we will this season. I think this is probably a 7 to 8 win season. I do think we've got the offensive weapons this year on and a quarterback, knock on wood, if he stays healthy, right? I think we've got a quarterback that can win, and I don't think we'll see a 3-quarterback rotation by necessity or 4-quarterback rotation by necessity this year. So anyway, thank you, Local B2. I hope you're right. Our good friend, I want to call him out as well. Our good friend Econ Advisor was active as well, going back and forth about whether UCF will be able to compete, how long it will take for us to compete, and he made the connection to donors for the business school and how long it's taken and all of that. And while I agree with him to some part, I do think we're in a different stage than where we were when he started there. Dr. Soskin has been there for a really long time. Trey's got some technical difficulties, so I'm going to carry the conversation alone. We've had a really long time to be able to build now, and I think our foundation is a lot stronger than it was when he started at UCF. And he's the biggest UCF fan. I remember I actually was his student. I didn't make this connection until recently. He started watching our show, and I was like, and it was Dr. Soskin. He's a big basketball fan, always promoted us. But I don't agree with you, Dr. Soskin. I do think we'll get there faster. And that's not just me being a homer. Thank you to at Tony Stebbins for hitting us up as well. And folks, normally we have a longer show and more to talk about, but we don't have any other sports to talk about. So unless there's something you guys want to chat about, baby crying. They call me young. I'm thinking that's Trey Neal. If you have something that you want us to comment on, please put it in the chat. I'm going to leave this session open for the next 5 minutes or so because we normally do other sports, others, fun facts, all of that stuff. We're a little tight right now. But if there's anything else that you guys want to chat about, I'm going to leave it open for another 5 minutes. Bottom line, though, check out the beginning of the show. Trey and I went into depth why Josh Derry is important to UCF football, why stretching the field and his ability to create separation, why we weren't doing that last year, and what that does to defenses. It's extremely important this year that we do that and that we continue to extend it in order to create dilemmas for defenses. If you have to commit or shade or push somebody to the boundary, then you're creating an imbalance in the quarters because that's how quarterbacks are looking at that. You're creating imbalance in whether you have to have more DBs back, which means you can't bring people into the box, which stops our running game, which we have we have Duke in the backfield. We have Tavion Swint coming back this year. There's a lot of reasons why it's extremely important to do that. And it limits what the offense's ability or what the defense's ability is to stop us, which opens up for big plays. The ability to have a quarterback who can step up and throw the long ball, who isn't a run-first quarterback, can still move, but he's going to step up in the pocket and throw the long ball to stretch the field. That's extremely important for pop plays. That's something that we were known for under Scott Frost, is the ability to go to the long ball and run games. So this all sets up for a solid offense, and that's why, despite being 5'9" and 182 pounds, speed kills and that separation kills. And if you want that in more detail, go back and watch this show. All right, one last call for questions, topics you want us to talk about, anything else that's out there. If not, we'll be back. Thank you for having patience with us. It's been a wonky off season. We appreciate all of the folks that join us on Listen and Love. Go back and watch the show. Comment, like, subscribe, tell your friends. We appreciate every single one of those. And I don't think Trey's going to be back in time. So without further ado, have a great week. Thank you for being here. Quick question. Any news about the progress on facilities upgrades? 2017 national champs? Yes, there's lots of updates about that. The tower is they're doing the finishing on the tower. On the front of the tower, they've got the plants. They've got bigger palm trees than what we had before in. The lighting's up. The lighting is working on the opposite side of the field. Remember, they had 4 light posts on the one side. We now have the light bars at the top of the tower, kind of North Carolina-esque. So they've moved those other 2. Those are wired up and ready to go. The Hagel Gateway will not be ready to go by the football season, and they're still going to be doing some finishing touches on some of the power on the interior stuff during the football season. We're thinking 2 to 3 weeks or so that'll be completely done. But will we be able to play football games with little disruption and experience it? Yes. Go back and listen to our TDT segment. There was a segment that we did about TDT. So the next priorities on the priority list, there's money. I don't know if you guys remember, we on our 100th episode, we talked with David Hansen, who's the facilities leader and operations guy over at UCF. He's been there forever. He told us a great story about the water fountains and why we really didn't have enough water fountains when we opened up the stadium. But he also told us that we are now creating both sides of the we're upgrading our media facilities on both sides of the stadium. So where the gravel parking lot was on the north side of the stadium, that's where the media hookups will be. And we're expanding that so that we can run multiple cameras and multiple sports. That's part of this next TDT funding as well, to put money towards that. New softball stadium on the horizon. A new track and soccer stadiums are also on the horizon. So we're right now in the process of getting the funds for that, as well as a few other upgrades in the football stadium. So on the facility side, the tower will be completely, utterly put a bow on it, done for this stage by probably the second or third week in of the season. 99% of it is nearing completion now. They're just doing finishing on the inside. The Hagel Gateway will not be done. Unfortunately, our Lazy River, even though it's been funded for years, our McNamara Cove, as it used to be called, will not be there. But the next things on the list, and we should find out, our presentation is next Wednesday for the TDT in front of the advisory board. And then we should find out by October whether we're going to have the new softball stadium, $24 million for a new softball stadium, the new soccer fields, the new track complex, and the additional upgrades to UCF football stadium, including the coaches' offices, funded by the TDT to the tune of $119 million. We have some good things going for us, but go and watch that segment. I hope that answers your question. Anything else that you have? All right, I'm watching I don't want to have dead air. I'm still watching the chat. Any other questions anybody has, or anything that you want us to comment on or bring up? All right, I'm gonna call it. So we're an hour and 41 in. We almost made it 2 hours without a bunch of sports. So thank you all. You guys have made it fun. Trey is still on baby duty, so he hasn't made it back. Alan was also on baby duty, and Josh was on birthday duty, and I was on moving duty last week. So thank you guys again for everything you do. Like, subscribe, follow, share. We're excited for football season. We think it's going to be better than what it was before. We'll give you, in the coming weeks, we'll give you what we think our win-loss record will be. We'll talk about what the most exciting places are to visit, and we'll have a whole heck of a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Like, subscribe, follow, comment. As you can see, we do talk about it on the show. We got one more comment. Thank you, 2017 national champions. We appreciate you. We do it for you. Go Knights and charge on, baby. I don't know. This is the random babbling that Josh usually does before the end of the show, so I guess I'm just going to do it.